Welcome back, everybody, to the DomCast, episode 52, here to cover a series that is tied 2-2. Yeah, once again, this should not take long. As I'm in OBS recording, I see that I got a Twitch follow from Chef Curry 30 Goat. Yeah, that's too on the nose. That is way too on the nose. This podcast is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, it's on YouTube. Your ratings help. So if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button. If you're on the other platforms, either leave some stars or leave a review. Let's not even waste any time. Let's go ahead and get into it. This series, leaving Boston, is tied, as I said it would be in the last podcast, and it's for a lot of the reasons that happened, but also just the respect that I have for Golden State. It's just the type of team they are, man. This is who they are. Nobody said that ending, well, I don't even know if this would actually be ending a dynasty, but nobody said taking a shot at the dynasty was going to be easy for whatever team had that honor. When they were down 0-1 in Golden State, I was just thinking, man, there's no way they are not going to be laser focused and come out and take game 2. Thought Boston had a chance to win it, but I just did not see Boston being able to take both games. Thought it would be tied going out of there, leaving Boston back 3-1, in which the series would basically have been ended. Just didn't see that happening either. Thought Golden State is just way too composed, specifically Steph. He's been in tough situations before. He's failed sometimes and he has succeeded in others. So give that man his respect, bro. Give that man his respect. He is having an all-time final series, partly due to the inability of Boston to be able to defend him like most teams have had. This isn't, we're going to get deep into the coverage today because that's the big elephant in the room, right? It is drop coverage. To varying degrees. It's I think in game 1 you saw it start out way heavier than anyone anticipated, and for the rest of the time it has basically been some variation of it. And Steph is forcing their hands. Steph is forcing their hands to come up higher and higher and higher, which is getting to the point, and it got to the point in game 4 of a couple of possessions where it was just a full-on switch. I believe I saw a couple of traps in there. What did we talk about last podcast? I was going, when does Boston hit that big red button that says trap on it? Because it's a big red button because you don't want to press it. You do not want to press it. But we'll get there. We will absolutely get there. And we'll get to what I think the odds are of each team closing this out and winning this series. I have many thoughts, man. First of all, I'm having fun. That's the very first part of this. And who like, out of people who enjoy basketball, who's not having fun with this? I got told by multiple people I'm only enjoying this because my team is in it. First of all, I want to say that watching your team run and duck for cover as Steph shoots from the hash is not actually all that fun. Like, you would rather not see your team involved in that situation. I've seen that for years, and it's a very entertaining thing, or a very interesting process to watch when it's not your team and there's nothing at stake. But when it's your squad, it's actually quite stressful. But through 4 games so far, 3 of them have been close, and they've either been competitive throughout or not too far out of reach, or they've been competitive basically until the end in one shape or another. Meanwhile, as I said earlier, Steph Curry is having an all-timer. I know coming into this playoffs, we did not know what we were going to get out of him. He had a slump this season, which, by the way, this finals performance is making people forget, because I already see people saying that he got robbed, should have been first team, and I did not have him on my first team. I had him on my second team, which he got, but again, it's recency bias. Absolutely thought throughout the season he deserved second team. And being hurt going into the playoffs and the shooting numbers just not being what they were, didn't know what you were going to get in the finals against a team that could apply this much pressure, and it has been a thing of beauty. But yeah, so he's putting on an all-timer. Meanwhile, the games have been fun to watch. Like, whether this is your team or not, I would think this is just fun as a basketball fan in general. I mean, of course, I'm having a blast watching my team in the NBA Finals, but aside from that, it's not a 3-0 series. It's not 3-1. This is competitive. We are 2-2. Like I said, with close games, going back to Golden State for what could be an incredible game 5. And just another game that could go on the long list of, I won't call it impossible situations, but highly pressured situations that Boston has been in. They've been living it all postseason. Game 6 against Milwaukee after that soul-crushing game 5. The game 7 against Miami in Miami after losing game 6 and a chance to go to the NBA finals. Like, they've been in situations like this, and those were hell more pressured, because at least if they lose game 5 here, you got a chance to go back to Boston. But anyways, let's talk about some of the things that happened in this game. So they go on to win game 3. They gave themselves enough of a cushion in the first half to be able to withstand the third quarter Warriors, which did happen. And by now, that's not even a secret. That's just something everyone's talking about. But series tied 1-1 going back to Boston. We pondered that a bit here. What do you do about the fact that you have not stopped the third quarter flurry yet? And it was to the point that in game 4, as we were doing the watch party, I just said, okay, you know what? Let's document how it happens, because I believe the Celtics had a 7-point lead going into coming out of the half. I said, all right, let's watch how they lose it. Let's watch how Golden State takes command here. I wanted to document it. And if I can remember correctly, the first 2 possessions that the Warriors had, they got open threes for Steph and Clay. They got them around screens, and I believe they might have even been off-ball screens. Whatever type of screens that they were, Boston had next to no activity and no fight through them. So one screen took the defender out, and they had open shots. And I was just going, okay, so you always ask this question, how does Golden State get this done in the third quarter? Obviously, they push the tempo up a little bit. You see if Draymond has a chance, he'll push the tempo. But then also, why, in this series specifically, there's been a couple of times where Boston has come out just sleep at the wheel. In those 2 possessions, I think that brought it to a 2-point game, like almost immediately. The game 4 third quarter wasn't as bad, actually. They survived that one a little bit better than they have the previous ones. But still, though, just those 2 bothered me. Those 2 heavily bothered me. And aside from that, turnovers. turnovers. So the Celtics have had good starts coming into these games, and it never quite gets all the way out of hand, because Boston gift wraps the Warriors possessions. And so there's different types of turnovers, correct? There's certain teams that force them. They hound offenses and they force those turnovers. And a lot of the turnovers that you see the Celtics have are just bad ideas. They're just bad ideas, or they're very, very risky ideas. And it makes me think back to the time Isaiah Thomas, Pistons point guard, said that I think he said it on an open court almost 10 years ago, that turnovers were actually a good thing as a point guard, because if you don't have many turnovers, that means you weren't taking enough risks. But in the Miami, well, there's no reason to go back to the Miami series. Again, they had a very physical defense that was forcing it. The only saving grace that Boston has when turning over the ball against the Warriors is that Golden State also turns over the ball quite a bit. They have some bad ideas. They drop the ball. They'll get an offense foul. They do a lot of the same things. And if they didn't, they would get out of hand so fast. Because these Celtics turnovers, right? The ones that are stuck in my head. Jason Tatum, the defense is aligned against him, who, by the way, is having a horrible series so far, offensively anyways. In between the lines, in between the 3-point line, he's having a terrible series. And that is, as a 3-level scorer, it's basically... hell, it's taken away almost 2 levels. He's not finishing well, and he's not shooting from the mid-range well. But anyways, defense aligned against him. Shout out to Wiggs. He's doing a good job on him. As overtasked as I think Wiggins could be in this series, he's doing a great job. The Warriors defense is lined up against Tatum. Grant Williams is sitting in the right corner. Now, a skip pass, a well-placed skip pass, or drawing some of the Warriors' attention away even, and skipping that to Grant could possibly give him a good 3, which the Warriors defense is probably okay with out of everything that could happen in a possession. Out of Jaylen Brown going to the rim or Tatum getting hot, they're probably okay with Grant Williams shooting it, even though we've seen that beat a team before. That's still, you pick your poison, which we're going to get to that later too, because that's what Boston is basically doing on defense. But to throw that skip, Tatum didn't do anything creative. He just threw it. If you play 2K, he basically just icon passed it without moving. He just icon passed it in place, which is a steal. That's an easy turnover. That was an easy turnover. And that one was frustrating, because that's what I mean when I say that the Warriors defense often doesn't pressure you into a lot of these turnovers. While they're good defensively, it's not like their physicality is pressuring you into these turnovers. Sometimes Boston just gifts them to them. There was another one where Tatum was going to the rim, and I'm not sure who was standing in the left corner, but they probably had a pretty good look. And Tatum basically tried to like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hook shot pass it. I guess while he was maybe going for the layup, tried to hook shot pass it, and turnover. Easy turnover. There was one where Tatum was, I think this one came in the second half, was driving towards the rim. Robert Williams was cutting in for what could have been a layup or a dunk, and the ball just slipped. I guess it literally just slipped, and it went through the hands of Rob, and it's out of bounds. And they were pretty close too. This was not anything ambitious. A couple of the other passes I was talking about were kind of ambitious. This one wasn't that ambitious. It just slipped. When you're trying to kill Golden State, you cannot give them extra possessions. Just give them extra possessions. And that's what's tough to watch about this, because although I said that I believe they were going to leave Boston tied, I thought there was basketball reasons, just like I thought there was basketball reasons they could get a game 2 done if Golden State would slip, as a contending team like them does not ever do. Same thing with this one. They had chances this game. They had chances, and at this point, it really feels like the best team the Celtics have played throughout this playoff run has been the Celtics. What about that last 2 or 3 minutes where you could pretty much feel the wind go out? I think you could feel the wind go out of the building when the Warriors drew up that 3-point lead. And there was still about 3 minutes left in the game, and Boston said, you know what? We are only shooting threes. Now, I do want to take a moment. Credit Golden State's defense. Excuse me. Credit Golden State's defense, because they did not give them layups. They didn't give the Celtics layups. They did not give them open looks. They didn't create anything for them that the Boston Celtics just didn't take. However, Kobe and I were doing the watch party, and I was just saying, bro, this looks just like us when we're in Park and the score is 18-20, and we don't want to tie the game because we know the next basket for them wins it. So we have to go for 3. And while the Warriors do deserve credit for not opening up a free 2, also Boston was 100% hunting that 3 for like 5 straight possessions and could not get it until they went down 6. And I thought that was what, amongst other things, I thought that really, really killed them. Andrew Wiggins from the start of this match of game 4 deserves credit. I know he deserves heavy credit. I know all the talk right now is about how much help Steph doesn't have. That's because, at least offensively, it seems the Warriors are like 70 or 80% dependent on whatever he can create. And if it's not him, it's mostly a prayer that Klay Thompson can hit, or that Jordan Poole is going to come hit something. But Wiggins from the start of the game came out hitting. That was one. And then he was a rebounding machine at some very, very, very key times, which, go back about 4 or 5 podcasts, or this might have even been on the NBA Twitch show, but you know, I still secretly push Wiggins propaganda. I don't call it that anymore because he's an op right now, but I had been trying to give the man his props throughout this entire playoff run, saying that he does those things that go unnoticed. A key rebound to give the Warriors an extra possession, or a key rebound that nobody else could grab at that moment, and a putback to keep the game close. Those plays that people won't remember a couple of years from now in the finals, Wiggs is there for those. And so I see you, Wiggs. The propaganda can't have the propaganda sirens out right now, but I see you, Wiggs. Especially again on defense, being the one like consistent wing defender that the Warriors really have right now. Because Gary Payton has had some good defensive plays too, but he is still undersized, and Boston is happy to try to post him up, which the Warriors are doing a great job of keeping that from happening. I saw JB try to post him up multiple times last game, and Golden State get in front of that and they blow that up at all costs. And so that's good stuff from them. So yeah, I touched a little bit on the turnovers there and on the end of the game. I'm just going down a list of things that I have, so it's going to be kind of out of order. Like I said, the entire time the Celtics are in the finals, I'm going to be unhinged. Yeah, Jason Tatum. I think by now we can see he is probably, again, this isn't even excuses, because everyone has something bothering them by this point in the series. Steph Curry had his leg landed on, and they seemed like they were questioning if he was going to be ready to play in game 4. Although he never did, it seemed like there was just question marks floating around, and he still came out and put on that all-time performance. So there are no injury excuses here. But Tatum, I think, unless he's just this bad in the finals right now, this injury he sustained in the Miami Heat series, and that we've seen him grab at like twice in the series, is clearly affecting him. He's not getting to his finishing is where I see it most. When he tries to finish, it seems like the ball is just slipping out of his hand. He's getting to the rim quite a bit. And when he does get to the rim quite a bit, you'll see it just doesn't go, or it rolls around, or it's just short. It's a tough scene for him right now. So that's one level. And then not being able to get anything to go in the mid-range, that's 2 levels. So it's basically left up to what he can create in assists, which he's done pretty well throughout the series, and what he can create from the 3-point line. Those 2 things. If it's not those, you're subject to an unpleasant Tatum experience most of the series so far. So that remains to be seen what he can get going. I thought in game 3 they did what they needed to do in terms of getting Curry into foul trouble. I'd been looking for that in games 1 and 2. In game 3 it seemed like they finally said, all right, cool, well, we're gonna hit this point now, make Steph Curry play defense. And of course, they adjusted by the end of that game to keep Curry on the floor. The Warriors adjusted. They kind of went back to a lot of what you saw in Dallas, where it's a show and recover thing. And then in game 4, they basically did everything they could to keep him out of those matchups. Because and I did take a lot of time last podcast to praise Curry's defense, I'm pretty sure I made the point that I still wanted to see them use that size advantage. And they've tried. They've tried because Curry's not big enough to defend Brown or Tatum. And so he has 2 options. He can try to take a charge, which can lead to him getting a blocking foul, or he can try to swipe the ball away, which can lead to him getting a reaching foul. Those 2 things don't work, and Boston is able to get close enough to the rim. It's probably 2 points. So attacking Steph is great, but the Warriors are also really good at showing you immediately, as of late, and especially game 4, showing you that they're not just going to allow that to happen. They're not just going to watch you switch on to him. So Wiggins will be there waiting to recover. Steph is really good at that scheme. Like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a scheme designed to hide him, but you know, being able to recover, it's a skill. He does it very well. He does it very well. And you see the Celtics don't get into the game of making that their only plan, because if the Warriors do blow it up, now your action looks shaky with how many ever seconds left you have to go on the clock. And not only that, but in game 3, he had around 4 fouls, I believe. We were trying to get him his last 2. And you just got to understand that with a player like Curry, it's just, and I know they talk about him not getting superstar calls, but still a superstar player. And you got to understand that refs are probably not going to call those last 2 fouls until certain points in the game, unless it's just egregious. It really has to be an egregious example of a reach in or a grab or something like that. And so I noticed Boston didn't continue to go at it and try to get him fouled out, because you don't want to just waste possessions where he ends up getting a charge. Like, he did that. I think he got one on Marcus Smart as they were trying to go at him, and you end up really killing your momentum if you go at him and they don't call the foul, you don't score, or he gets a call in his favor. So I thought they did a decent job managing that. I still would like to see them pressure that for game 5, because that's a key. That is a key. If you go in and you can get him neutralized very, very early, get 2 fouls on him very early, now Kerr has to manage his minutes even more than he does. You're looking at massive issues, because somebody else in Golden State has to make something shake and quickly. And Boston was able to get off to that fast start last game and build that lead that we knew was going to evaporate. That's just, again, 3rd quarter Warriors. When they built that lead up that high, I just said, okay, so we should probably be tied or maybe only down 1 by the time the quarter ends. And it was close to that situation. Going into that was a big reason I didn't think there was any chance of a 3-1 comeback, because that's all it takes. If they were down 3-1, you go to Golden State and you get Curry into some trouble early, that's you give yourself a heavy advantage. But yeah, I would still like to see them go to that. Even if you aren't going to get the fouls on Curry, make Golden State's defense be active, make them move around, make them hide Curry, make them do the movements and actions necessary to hide Curry. That's all I want to see. Sometimes I thought there was 2 possessions where Boston basically opted not to, because they saw the Warriors were getting ready to hide him, and so they just swung the ball to the wing with Derek White instead. And it's like, no, they're gonna hide him, but make them execute that. Open something else up, because hiding it creates potential for a soft spot. It creates a crack for a soft spot. Like, pressure that. But yeah, I thought there were some times where the Celtics just said, oh, okay, they're gonna hide him, bet let's try the next thing. And I don't know, man, you can only have, like, I'll get to that at the end. Basically, it's a common sense thing. You can only have like 1 or 2 stagnant plays against Golden State that lose you the game. It just happens like that sometimes. Draymond Green. There's been much made about him and his performance and his podcast. At a point, they put up a graphic that showed he had 17 fouls in the series and 15 points. He is not a threat almost at all in this series. And in game 4, you could see that he tried to be at the beginning. He tried, and it's just the scheme and the matchup is not great for him. So Draymond has not been able to shoot in years. He hasn't really been an offensive threat in years. And now he's going against this team that has Horford and Williams as the big guys. And so his method to try to be aggressive at the start of game 4 is sometimes just look at the rim and run towards it. But what are you running towards when Al Horford is already sagging off of you? You're just running towards a big body, and you're probably not going to get a clean look at a layup. So the one way that he could be effective, because it's not going to come through shots, and I'm talking about scoring wise, the one way he could be effective is also shut out. So that's dead. On the defensive end, I've seen Jaylen Brown go at him multiple times throughout the series. He's not, even if he's had some good defensive possessions or has the potential to have some good defensive possessions, it's not lockdown Dre from years ago that would offset the fact that he's killing the space on the offensive end. And so there's that. The one thing he can still do, or two things he can still do that can, at the 4, hurt a team, is push the ball in transition, because especially on Golden State, he pushes the ball really fast, catch the defense off balance, get like a handoff to Clay or stuff or something like that. You can still do that. And he can still slip on pick and rolls, or if there's space for him, he can hit that dive and maybe hit Kevon Looney for a layup, or whoever the man is between or whoever the man is on the other side of a Celtics defender once that 2-on-1 situation is created. He can still do that, and that's basically the play that ended up winning the Warriors the game there, or I think setting the lead to about 5 with little time left. So he can still do that. But I've seen suggestions to basically bench him this series, because those factors don't really offset how hard he makes life pretty much for Steph right now, and for the Warriors in general. When he's on the floor, and especially when he's on it with Kevon Looney, he'll get the ball on the left wing, or maybe in like the mid area, the mid-range area, and immediately pass it to someone else. But Boston's defense is already focused on that guy that was open. And it might be 1 or 2 guys that run out to the guy that was open and just completely ignore Draymond, because he's not a threat anywhere offensively. And it is crazy to watch, because that was not him years and years ago. It really is mind-boggling to watch. The one thing that scares me is now you've given the Warriors chance to figure that out, because in game 4, Kerr started managing him. First of all, at the beginning of the game, we already knew he was searching for different lineups, because space was clearly an issue. This whole 3-on-5 thing, I had said I was interested in how that would work. And he very early on went with Otto Porter in the starting lineup instead of Kevon Looney, which he pulled quite quickly because the rebounding was getting out of hand. Robert Williams was snagging everything. So I would be surprised if Kerr came out with that specific lineup in the beginning of game 5. I would be surprised, just because if Boston doesn't throw boneheaded turnovers and they come out hot, the rebounding advantage could, in that first 3 or 4 minutes, could be in games that are ending close and in games that are only being decided by a few plays at the end of games, that could be monumental if you let those first 3 minutes slip. I would be surprised if he tried that same thing again. But he did find out towards the end of this game 4, okay, I've got to manage Draymond. Certain plays he doesn't need to be on the floor, certain plays he does, and I thought he did a good job with that. And that was one of the main reasons I wanted Boston to win game 4 so bad when the chance was there. It's because I was thinking, all right, what happens right now, Draymond being on the floor and the Warriors' unwillingness to bench a guy who's won championships with them, and it's been a big part of that core to win championships. Like, they're going to probably figure out they have to do it eventually, but maybe it'll be too late if Boston wins this game. Now, after game 4, it seems like they have an understanding. I know Dre is probably a guy that's going to do whatever he's got to do to win. And Kerr is probably going to do the same thing. Say game 5 is a like, I don't know, 3 to 5 point game once again, and he just starts on certain possessions. You just don't have him out there. You have the very spaced lineup, which a spaced lineup with 3 minutes left in the game and the Warriors leading by 5, and you can put Draymond back in a couple of possessions. That could literally decide it. That spaced lineup might be what gets Curry his next 3 to push the lead to 8, and then boom, like the game is pretty much over at that point. You don't. Hell, Boston panics. I thought they panicked at the end of game 4. I thought they panicked. So just one possession like that could really turn the game. And so I see Kerr figuring that out. I hate that he figured it out already, or that let's just say that he got the balls to do it, because now he's going to keep doing it. Draymond clearly hurts them on offense. At the end of the game, he made some good plays. He ran really hard towards the empty space to create that 2-on-1 situation. Like, he was doing those things, but I don't believe it offsets what happens the rest of the game. So Curry will forever be managing that now. I'm assuming he'll be managing that. He'll be managing Draymond Green better, because I don't think they're going to bench him and go with a lineup of like Otto Porter at the 4 and Kevon Looney at the 5. I just don't see them starting without Dre. Although you can argue they shouldn't create that problem since it's tied now, but also I think that would have the potential, if they played with it, to really unlock something that could give Boston trouble, because Dre is a self-cover, man. He's a self-cover right now. As long as he can shoot threes with nobody in his airspace, or nobody's really that afraid of him slipping, because he's bobbled the ball a couple of times when they've done that, it's a really big problem for them. But yeah, it seems like they figured that out. Kerr actually made some like, it was questionable, but at least he didn't go overboard with it, with the Steph Curry situation, because at the end of game 4, what ends up happening is Steph Curry is he's due for his regular rotational rest that Curry has set. The quarter ends and the Warriors are up by 1. The watch party, I said, this is the time where you're on the brink of 3-1. Curry has to play the rest of the game. That's how I saw it. I thought Steph was going to be in from that midway through the third all the way through the rest of the game, because if you play him and you lose, then you just live with those results. I don't think you just go, we had to get him rest, we had to manage him, we had to, he was gonna be too tired, he wasn't gonna have a great fourth quarter. Fam, I'd have just lived with it. But anyways, only about 3 minutes passed, and you could see the Celtics were really about to blow the lid off. The momentum was getting there. The Warriors, I think Wiggins threw a turnover, and then Kerr said, all right, enough. Like, after that turnover, I was looking and going, man, if Steph Curry does not walk to that scorer's table by himself and get back in the game, something is great. Like, Kerr's got voodoo. He's got magic if that doesn't happen, because there's no way he shouldn't be here for the rest of this. And I can see how Warriors fans would be upset. Normally, I've not been a big like Kerr detractor, but at that point, I was just going, man, there's no way in the hell they sit him. And so Kerr managing his minutes, I think he did the common sense thing 3 minutes through the fourth quarter. Are the Celtics doing the common sense thing defending him? That is it's the big question, right? Drop coverage. Okay. First of all, I want people to understand this is Steph Curry we're talking about here. Greatest shooter of all time by far. It's not even close. And especially when he's like this, there's not good options. Okay, you have, let's just run through the options real quick. So you have the heavy drop, which is a terrible option. Again, don't even know why that was a thing in the first quarter. They went away from that. You have the variation of drop where you come up, but you're still in the principles of drop coverage. And that's basically what they've been doing to avoid full switching. So whether it's Horford or Williams, you bring them up. And by the way, I do want to say Curry has countered. If you look at the first quarter of game 4, Horford coming up basically to the 3-point line, Steph Curry dribbles toward him, steps back. He hit 2 threes like that, hitting Horford on a step back, because he knows that he's in drop, because he knows that he'll be dropping towards the rim. Just fake some momentum that way, get back to the other leg, shoot a 3. And when a guy can do things like that, once again, there's just not good options. There's not good options. So you have that variation, right? You have switch, which is a terrible idea, because while Horford is a versatile big man, and I have seen 2 possessions where he stayed with Steph Curry a lot of the play and did a really good job, when they switch a big onto him, Curry just says, oh, cool. Well, this is a direct lane to the rim now. I'm faster than you. I have crazy handles. I'm going to drive to the rim. I'm either going to finish or the defense is going to collapse in and I'm going to get somebody else a shot. That is basically it. You don't want to start opening up the rest of the team because Steph is going to get his regardless. No matter what you do, Steph is going to get his. If he has to do what I just talked about and step back and hit Horford or hit your big with a step back three, he will do that. If he has to shoot it with you to the side of him, he will do that. Curry is going to get his points. You do not want that to happen and also just hand the Warriors other shooters open corner threes, whether it be Porter, Wiggins, Clay. You don't want to just start handing them those looks on the count of stopping Steph completely, because if the rest of them warm up and then you still get 27 to 30 points from Steph, now you're fucked. You're completely fucked at that point. And so you want to avoid those switch possessions as much as you can, even if Horford is going and Draymond might be on the floor sometimes and make a switch okay. Maybe you can finesse it to where there's even extra help, but most of the times you just want to stay out of that because Curry is really good. You remember at the beginning of the series I was saying, I actually don't know if I even put that on the preview podcast, but I was going, a lot of the teams that Boston has played so far, it's been very high rim pressure guys and a Jimmy Butler and a Giannis, and that's like their first priority. The Warriors' first priority is not rim pressure, but they still have Curry, who is an electric finisher. He is still a great finisher and he still can get downhill. He just doesn't search for that. But if you give it to him, he will do it at an elite level. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to do the full switch. Okay. So what have we gone through so far? We went through the heavy drop, went through variations of drop. You go through that full switch, getting over the screen. Obviously, Boston is trying to get over the screen, but again, that's the variation of drop. You're basically hedging there until your guy can get over, which is hard. Warriors are a good screening team. By the way, in Game 4, I believe per Nikias on Twitter, they set 48 ball screens, which was their most in a game since like 2017. So yeah, that's happening. The Warriors, they know that's a pressure point. They know what makes the Celtics uncomfortable. Okay, and your other option pretty much is the big red button, because even if you switch successfully, right, let's say it's not Horford. There's been some situations where it was like two wings or a guard and a wing. There was one where Jason Tatum got switched onto him after a screen, then they simply ran another screen and got to Horford. That was the one that Tatum fouled Steph Curry on, but they didn't call it. Yeah, that was clearly a foul. They're gonna keep doing it until they get what they want. That's it's 2K Park play basically. Yeah, your other option is the big red button, is to start trapping. Do you know what happens when they start trapping? So you saw it on a couple of possessions, right? There was one possession that turned out well because once again, they didn't fear Dre and Curry threw a kind of lazy pass. So he was flowing to the corner. I believe it was Rob Williams and Marcus Smart about to double him on the wing. And he just kind of threw a lazy hook shot over the head pass to Dre, which was very easy to pick off. Otherwise, it would have been a Dre slip and they would have had an open shot somewhere. But he turned over the ball there. You're probably not going to get those from Curry often. If there is a situation where you can trap and make a pass angle really tough, I think you do it. But other than that, not a good idea. And there was another possession where Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, he was on the left wing. You had two huge wings on him. Yeah, that's probably a good idea to trap, except it was kind of lazy. And Klay Thompson was right next to him. And so Steph immediately dumped that off to Klay. I don't know. It didn't really seem like JB or JT were on the same page of who was going to switch in that situation or who was going to cover the shooter. I think Grant Williams ran out to him as well. It did not matter. They were not on the right page quick enough. You have less than a half a second to make decisions when Golden State has somebody open, and they just weren't quick enough. And Klay had an open three. I think that's the one that gave him the lead. So on pick and rolls, on any situation, you have two options right now, right? If you want to say, all right, Steph is beating us, it's happening, he's having one of the best final series, he's probably having his best final series. And that was definitely his best finals game. That had to be, or it's in contention with it. You have two options. You can say, all right, anybody else beat us but Steph. And you can go full trap if you want, but in a way that almost makes things easier for Golden State, in my opinion. Because if you start trapping and taking away Steph's threes, you're just getting Golden State either open threes for somebody else or things that are closer to the rim. Because what if Draymond Green had not have, what if Steph hadn't have thrown that lazy pass when he was trapped on the right wing? What would have happened? Draymond would have caught it, he would have darted down the lane, and somebody would have probably been in the dunker spot, and he would have put an easy pass to them. So they'll start getting layups. So if you're Ime Udoka right now, I'm just trying to walk you through the process of what the coaching might be thinking, because just like Jason Tatum said, Jason Tatum, his quote was funny. He said, "I promise we're not trying to let him go off." What's on the coaching board is contested Steph Curry 3-pointers from miles away or layups and open shots for somebody else. Which one do you pick? With 2 games left in the series, I'll tell you what I'll pick. I would rather continue to force Steph to be super Steph. Now, I do want to also throw in here that in game 4, the Warriors ended up missing a lot. I think they only made 3 of their uncontested threes. A lot of those had to do with like Clay or Wiggins, but even Clay missing open threes is just so uncharacteristic. So you wonder, like, out of these last few games that you have to play, at some point, Clay had a good game 3. He will probably have another good one where the shots are falling, which is why you want to win a game like game 4 when you have it in hand, because you're not always going to get that luxury. But okay. Aside from that, just on the option of guarding Steph, when you have guys behind him and to the side of him and in front of him, for the Warriors to win 2 more games, I would prefer to just force Steph to continue being super, to maybe barely win games, than to let Clay heat up as well. And then now you give him more open shots and he starts making them. Or to let Wiggins get going, because he was great. He was magnificent in game 4. Or to let Dre actually be involved in this series and do something positive, and have him actually be that role man that gets other guys layups. You start opening up all that stuff for the Warriors, and I think you lose them quicker than you've lost these games, because these were close. Again, game 4 was winnable despite Steph doing everything he did. If they had not rushed in that last 3 minutes and just said 3-pointers are death, they might have still won that game. And so at a certain point, you just have to understand with superstars like these and potential top 10 players, you just have to choose. You just have to pick your poison, because you're not going to stop anything. You're not going to stop Steph from getting space. If you take Steph's space away, he will simply just create it. He will step back to the hash if he has to. It'll end up being foul 3-pointers. You're not going to take it away. You can only limit it as much as possible. And so that's what I think the Celtics defensive philosophy is. There are some plays where they do get caught sleeping. Yes, they do get caught sleeping in a drop that's deeper than they should be. For these next how many ever games, there should not be a situation where anybody is any lower than the 3-point line. As far as the big men, nobody should be any lower than that. There should not be a play where Steph is able to step and get like a very clean look because Al Horford's feet were behind the 3. I agree with that, but I do not agree just they need to trap him and double him and do everything, unless the situation is right, unless it's right and Draymond Green is killing space. Outside of that situation, they do not need to go on to that full big red button, because it's not a solution. It's not a solution. It's just gonna make a smart team make other smart plays, which they are capable of, and I think you lose easier that way. Steph has had a magnificent series, and by all indications, he will probably keep having a magnificent series. But if a legendary player beats you, then he beats you. You don't just say, all right, we're gonna completely shut him out at the cost of getting 2 other guys going, and now you're losing games by like 15 points. And yeah, Steph isn't going off anymore, but you've got other guys' confidence. I don't know. That's just, maybe you disagree. I'd love to hear in the comments. Maybe you disagree, but I just think that people make these things sound way easier than they actually are when it comes to superstar players, when the reality is you have to choose, and Boston is chosen. So no deep drop, but trap sparingly, trap and double sparingly. Because if Steph just has to hit a shot with an outstretched hand over his face from the hash, then fuck it, he was the better player. He was the better player and he won. That's how I feel about it. I do want to give Bjelica just a couple of minutes, not even minutes, couple of seconds of praise, because while he hasn't been great like offensively for them by any stretch of imagination, and I don't exactly know why he's out there, my theory again is just to be out there to maybe shoot it sometimes in a spaced lineup. He should be the target, and I don't know that he's been scored on much. In game 2, he came on and played minutes and actually defended Jason Tatum pretty well. In game 4, it's like the Celtics just lost their power trying to attack him. And I kind of wonder if it's bait from Kerr. I kind of wonder if it's bait, because he did something similar to Kevin Durant in 2016 to get KD to keep attacking. He clearly didn't have it going, but he kept shooting. And part of that was Kerr's defense kind of designing it that way, which is weird, right? Like bait KD in the shots, but he wasn't going and it ended up working. So when they put Bjelica on the floor, immediately all attention becomes, okay, we're going to get, and especially when it's a pick and roll, God, it's Steph and Bjelica guarding the PNR. So you're saying, oh gosh, we either get Steph switched onto us or we get Bielitsa. Cool. The only problem is they haven't really created anything against Belly. They've tried, and I think it resulted in a turnover, resulted in a tough shot. They've not been able to just, turn him into barbecue chicken as you would imagine that they probably want to, could, or should. And so I just had to mention that because people laugh when he's out there. My theory is that if he gives you an open three, that's cool, which I don't think has really happened yet. But the other part of that, it really seems like bait to get Boston to just kind of get a one-track mind, kind of like what I was talking about with going at Curry when he's in foul trouble. It doesn't always work. Hasn't always worked with Bielitsa so far, and Boston, it kind of makes them stagnant a bit, gets them into an ISO set, and it seems to be ironically when the Celtics go cold. I know you have great moments from Jaylen Brown isolated, but when they're not moving the ball and they just go into a very a slow stance and just try to 1v1, I almost feel like guys prefer that. I almost feel like teams prefer, or specifically the Warriors kind of prefer that. So I had some thoughts on Bielitsa, and that is probably it for this podcast. I think as far as the notes that I have written here, I have touched on everything I want to touch. It is now, the next two games, whoever can win two more games. I'm not moving off my prediction. I had Boston in 6. I felt like they had a golden chance to go up 3-1. They made a couple of bad decisions towards the end of the game and lost. Curry had an all-time game, and it was still winnable. So there's no reason to panic. This series, people are switching their stances every single game. Like when the Warriors lost game 3, people were basically talking about them like they were on their deathbeds and saying, oh, there's no way they can win these the majority of the next few games and come back and do this. I'm like, bro, every game is different. Literally every game comes down to like how these teams start, how they manage that third quarter, a couple of fouls, a couple of different plays go a different way, and one team is won by 8 or for whatever. It's like changing every game. And so game 5 is going to be a totally different game. Now people have switched back to, oh, Boston's in trouble. Like, again, I think those of us who were unbiased and level-headed thought we were going back to Golden State tied. More than likely, that was probably the 70%. It was leaning in that scenario, like 70% that they were going to go back to Golden State tied. Just as a fan of the Celtics, they've won tough games all postseason. They had that sweep against the Nets. Still, pretty much all those games were close. Game 5 was probably the most soul-crushing loss I've ever seen against the Bucks, and they came back and won that series. They came back and won 2 straight. Game 6 also pretty soul-crushing against Miami. Came back and won a Game 7 on the floor after almost blowing it. They've been in tough situations this entire season against teams that pressure them in harder ways. Let's be real. Like Curry, well, I don't want to say harder ways. Like Curry, just because he takes tough shots doesn't necessarily mean it's harder to guard these other things. Like, it's impossible to guard Steph, so that's really not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying those are really, 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 really tough shots that Steph is making right now. And so if I'm Boston, just don't overreact. Get Tatum going however you can. But at this point, again, if it has to be JB, it has to be JB. Attack Steph when you can. And if you're the Warriors, Kerr has a bang up job to do. Like, to win this series, he has a hell of a job to do because he's got to manage Draymond Green. He's got to find spaced lineups. Some people, the debate now is whether he should give Moody or Kuminga some run. I tend to think that because we're heading to a game 5 and we haven't seen them yet, we probably won't. But, and also those are really young guys. Yeah, they even saw minutes in the G League this year. So do you put them out there in a final situation against a team like Boston? Again, these games are being decided by a couple of plays at random points in the game. A blown rotation or a boneheaded pass, just one of those could literally cost you. And so I'm not sure if Kerr is going to dig in that far into the bench, but he's got a job to do with Draymond. And if he finds himself in another situation, because apparently Curry was not happy about being benched to start the 4th. If he finds himself in another situation where Boston could take the momentum, you're playing with fire, not playing Steph. Like, you are playing with fire. The Celtics, yeah, they beat themselves a lot, but that one time they don't. If Steph is sitting and now they've blown a lead to 8 or 10 while he was on the bench at the beginning of the 4th, you just cost it. You just cost him the game. So yeah, game 5 is going to be extremely difficult for both teams, in my opinion. This does not seem to be the Miami series where one team comes out and leads by 100 and that's just the whole game. This is a totally different Totally different series. I didn't really mention the name of Robert Williams because they lost game 4, but he did. I kind of mentioned him at the beginning, getting the rebounds. He's been great defensively. He's giving whatever in Boston. He was great defensively. He's giving whatever he can left in those knees to finish the series. Shout out to him because I told y'all I thought he was gonna miss a game in Boston. He did not, and yeah, if they can have him out there, especially during a double big lineups, it's really he's made a lot of layups really tough for Golden State, and so. Maybe that's something you consider when you talk about doubling Steph, that when we talk or trapping him, is that Rob has been really great roaming, but I lean on the side of if Steph is going to beat us with magical shots, then let that happen. I mean, don't let it happen, but if that's what happens and he hits 2 more 40-point games with nothing but magic, then we can just shake hands and go the other way. Like that's what I think. I don't want to start seeing Wiggins cuts to the rims in easy buckets and he ends up with 20. Because they handed it to him. Well, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the 2022 NBA Finals. Please rate the show if you enjoy it on any of these platforms. Oh gosh, I guess the next podcast would be if they ended up going to a game 7 or if we have a winner in the next couple of games. Because whoever wins next game goes up 3-2, and then after that, yeah, win or game 7. That'll be the next pod probably. Appreciate y'all listening, and I will see y'all then.